Hello, this is Martin Page, and this is a Radio OwlsNest special. I'm going to be talking about my upcoming new album, The Occupation of Hope, my second instrumental ambient record. I'm going to preview some of the tracks, tell you about the inspiration behind this record, and tell you some of the stories about the individual songs. It was a great experience to record my first instrumental album, The Amber of Memory, back in 2018, and I was very encouraged to continue the trend. And over the last year and a bit, I've been laying down the tracks to this album, The Occupation of Hope. I feel there's been a growth and a change in the way I have been writing these instrumentals since The Amber of Memory, and I really felt that there was a different kind of energy, a different kind of force field, and a different kind of atmosphere appearing when I started all the songs for this album. My previous instrumental album was based on impermanence, and there was a theme from beginning to end. On this album, each individual song has its own currency and its own story and its own spirit. Each song lives in its own universe as such. Well, let's get to it. I'll be playing you a few selections from the album, the LP. We don't say LP much these days, do we? A few snippets from this record. And let's start off with track 1, which is called Samatha, Soldier of Peace. Somebody very famous, very spiritual said, "I regard myself as a soldier of peace." That's a track called Samatha, Soldier of Peace. In my studio I have all the old analog drum machines that I grew up with. The Lindrum, the 808 and the MPC 60. And I do feel that spiritual work is a rhythmic work as well. And so I really felt that in this spiritual song I wanted to convey the energy, the power, the rhythm of the peaceful warriors. And as the great Gandhi said, there is an indefinable, mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it. That's Samatha. There's a track on this album called Orphan, and I'd like to play a bit of that to you now. I came across a melodic theme that seemed to haunt me, and it reminded me a little bit of the great work by Eno, the track called Apollo. And I just followed my instincts, and somehow I felt I was writing a song that referred to how we are all really orphans in this world, and even the world is an orphan in space. Anyway, this is a bit of Orphan. This is Martin Page, and I'm playing you bits and pieces from a new album of mine just about to come out called The Occupation of Hope, and that's a track called Orphan. There was a beautiful track from Eno that was called The Ending Ascent, and I remember that as a kid, just listening to that and thinking it was really quite beautiful. Something in Orphan made me feel that I was connecting with that kind of melodic sense, and I remember using a beautiful little keyboard called a Novation Ultranova. That's the main instinct of that track, called Orphan. If you get a chance, check out the beautiful video done by David J. Knight for the song Orphan. It's quite wonderful, really, when you think about it. I do, later in life here as a songwriter who's written for many years, that when you start constructing an album, you start to feel like you're really writing a book or making a movie. Things start to gel together, and even though you may not think you're writing an album, you do find at that period when you're doing it, things link together. And I found that very strongly on this album, The Occupation of Hope. I think a tone, an atmosphere starts to encroach as you're working, and you do feel there's a linkage and a theme of some sort beginning to come together. And I'd like to play you a track now called Baptism. And I remember that I was looking at a very ancient book of pictures of baptisms taking place, black and white photos taking place in the deep south of America in the late 1800s. I had lived down south before in Beaufort and South Carolina, and I could really smell what these photographs were saying to me. And also what hit me was the power of water. This was the magical substance that was going to change people's lives. And if you look at the old pictures, you can tell there's a real sense of ritual. And so let me play you a bit of Baptism. Well, here we are playing a few snippets from my upcoming album, The Occupation of Hope. That's a track called Baptism. Well, there's a very, very special track to me on this album, a track called Laika. And it's about the Soviet space dog who became one of the first animals in space. And probably a few of you out there who listen to my radio shows, Radio OwlsNest, you know I'm a huge animal lover, and I'm always pushing for us to stop all that scientific testing on animals. And Laika seemed to me to be the sign that I could put into music, a message I could put into music. I've always wanted to do this, to portray the suffering that we bring to animals, especially in scientific testing. I've heard people say that music can't influence people to change their ways, well, or change the world. But I do believe that art and music does have that power. And so I wanted to write this special song for me about Laika. So let me tell you now about this unique little creature. And this sweet dog, she was a Soviet space dog who became one of the first animals in space and the first animal to orbit the Earth. Laika was a stray mongrel from the streets of Moscow. I know they went searching for the right dog for the longest time. She was selected to be the occupant of the Soviet spacecraft Sputnik 2 that was launched into low orbit on the 3rd of November 1957. There was little known about the impact of space flight on living creatures at that time. No capacity for her recovery and survival was planned, and she died of overheating or asphyxiation very soon before she was to be poisoned in flight. Very early in writing this album, I knew this song was going to be very important to me.
We can only pray in this time of aloneness and suffering that God will be merciful and speed the end. This voiceless cry of mercy as this satellite spans the earth should be long remembered as a symbol of the torture the animal world must go through.
That's a short section of my song Leica that is featured on my upcoming album, instrumental album, The Occupation of Hope. I wanted to make the track as cinematic and to relate to the sounds Leica must have heard when the rocket was taken off, and the fear she must have felt and the terror. And I wrote the melody in 6, and somehow that had a feeling of pathos and a kind of Russian aesthetic and context. Leica, to me, was a martyr for all the animals that we know are locked up in all the scientific labs all over the world. And that's why it's a special song for me. And to know more about Leica's story, it'd be great for you to check out the incredible video that David J. Knight made about Leica for this album. There is a song on this album called Ash Glory. It was inspired by my reading of the great poet Paul Celan. His innovative and very modern writing really inspired me. And this song has many different time changes in it. And that made me think about the poetry of Paul Celan, which was incredibly modern and experimental for its time. Here's a bit of Ash Glory. That's a preview of a track called Ash Glory from my upcoming instrumental album just about to be released called The Occupation of Hope. Ash Glory, I went through many different time signatures. It was very interesting to me to piece together a song like this, which takes many adventures. And again, as I said, it was influenced by the great poet Paul Celan. Paul Celan is widely considered to be one of the most innovative poets of the 20th century. He was a German-speaking Jew, and he was sent to forced labour in concentration camps during World War II. And he settled eventually in Paris in 1948, where he lived and wrote until he committed suicide. Obviously, his poetry deeply affected me, especially with his innovative rhythms and style. And he said in the post-Holocaust world, Reality is not simply there, it must be searched for and won. And on the beginning of this teaser, at the beginning, the music I'm playing for this Radio OwlsNest special is another track featured on the Occupation of Hope, inspired by this man's work called Breath Turn, and I'll be fading this show with a bit of that music as well. I'd like to play you now a snippet of a song called Walking with My Father, which is on the new album. It's really a meditation on a memory I remember really well. And, there are these certain memories, aren't there, in our lives that just actually stay there, even though I was so young when this happened. And my father took me out to walk across a Roman bridge just outside Southampton. And I remember him talking to me about the history of Southampton and this Roman bridge that led across into a little village called Totton. And when I was writing this song, I felt these memories very strong. I'd like to play it to you now. There's a small section of a track called Walking with My Father. That's on my new album, just about to come out. I think the descending string bass line made me really feel like walking and just moving forward slowly. And as I said before, memories, some of them vanish and some of them stay with you. And Walking My Father on that Roman bridge way back in time, that's still very, very vibrant in my mind. I'm a great fan of Harold Budd's work, and I think when I was recording this song, I was thinking about that, the improvisation of the piano, and also the work of Gavin Bryars. I've got great respect for his work, and I think when I was writing Walking with My Father, I was also taking his style on board. So anyway, we have been playing a few tracks from my upcoming new second instrumental album called The Occupation of Hope. And I'm very excited to say it should be out very soon. And I hope by previewing some of the songs today, you might take a deeper dive and investigate it. By the way, there are 14 tracks on the album. I touched upon this LP, we don't usually say that word these days, do we? But I'm going to say it again, long player, LP. I touched upon a few subjects very close to my heart. I'm extremely proud of this new project. My father used to say to me when I was writing the pop songs, and which I still do, he used to say to me, "Son, why aren't you writing songs for movies?" And somehow, I felt when I was recording The Occupation of Hope, I was doing just that. Each song seemed to have its own theme, its own story, and its own motivation. Well, as we fade out on another track from The Occupation of Hope, a track called Breath Turn, I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the preview. Cheers, be safe, Martin.